Hello, everybody. This is Aquataser, and I haven't made a video in a while, but I'm going to be trying to properly give my thoughts on Sparksy, Sparkle, Yagwang, just the new characters, new patch for Honkai Star Rail 4.0. To be honest, I haven't been playing too much of this game. I've been playing ZZZ a lot more. Um, I still play occasionally, but I'm definitely coming back in full force for Sparksy, just because I love her character design so much. Obviously, I've got Sparkle, and I do have her E2, which is important for her buffs. So let me go ahead and, by the way, this is the build I'm going to run. With the new E1, which we'll get to in a second, I will hit 200 speed, which is obviously amazing for um, any DPS. She's going to be bringing up 50%. So pretty nice. And then, yeah, I'm just running two piece speed to make that possible. Lushaka, because it's the, easiest and most generalistic thing to hit outside of, Broken Keel. But obviously my effect res isn't high enough with 185 speed. So, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And then we'll talk about Lycone options for Sparkle, where I think each one is going to fit into her buffs, and then especially her with Sparksy as well. So if we go here, so Sparksy as a character definitely seems pretty interesting. I am a big fan, obviously, of her design. If you haven't seen her animations, go take a look. They're, in my opinion, the best in the game. But yeah, I guess it's up to your preference. It's very silly, which I think fits her really well, but it does clash with characters like Phanon, or even Cyrene, to be honest, in terms of like their story relevance um, for like the look of the animations. And then as you can see here, I've got her light cone, a bunch of light cones, everything pulled up here. And then if I need to, I'll come back here and look at Yale Guang. But Sparksy's an elation unit, and we've got some of the math now on how her kit's actually going to function. So basic attack's pretty just standard. She has a DPS as an elation, so that's something to keep in mind. Her skill starts a live stream, and you get an enhanced basic, which is this one over here, and triggers engagement farming. And engagement farming is basically kind of like Ching Shui's skill usage, where it just uses skill points. It doesn't really explain it in this, but essentially, yeah, it costs a skill point. You can see here, -1 skill point. Basically, just increase their damage multiplier for enhanced basic, and just gives her punchline, which is something that matters for Aha Instant, which is a new elation mechanic that is pretty interesting. I'm not too sure how much I like it, but it's kind of like a forced follow up attack. And then there's new elation units have an elation skill, and that's essentially how it all kind of comes together with like a mono elation team. We'll see that in the future, obviously. Her ultimate just gives her punchline, deals damage, and you can see the multiplier here: zero point 0.6 times elation plus 50% of her attack. And elation as a stat is kind of like elemental mastery from Genshin, where it's a flat number that you will get uh, just basically existing as a character. You could gain it through different sources, but the important thing is to note is that elation, I believe the formula is something involving character level and then just like base elation. And I think attack is also involved, but it could not be. I don't remember. It does gain damage percent from other sources. So you'll see, I think in her kit, she gains elation percent. Yeah, so her bonus ability gives her elation percent, but normal damage bonuses do not affect this. So it's kind of a way of nerfing some supports that just give a ton of damage percent, which is pretty important for team building. The important thing is that with her damage not being buffed by traditional damage buffers, traditional damage amplifiers, I'm using a different word, like Cypher for vulnerability or defense shred, stuff like that, those are impactful for elation damage. So that's something to keep in mind. So Cypher Tribby as well, Res Pen does matter. Like damage percent doesn't, Res Pen does, vulnerability, defense shred, all those types of multipliers do work for elation damage. But yeah, just does damage, gives her punchline. We'll see that in a second. Her enhanced basic attack just has a pretty standard attack multiplier. It's not too crazy. The important thing to note is that her engagement farming does increase the damage multiplier, but it is still just based off her attack. So, we're not seeing elation too much in there yet, except for this ultimate. Her elation skill, however, which is triggered by the Aha instant, which will be explained later, deals fire elation damage equal to 50% to all enemies, and deals 20 hits of fire elation equal to 22% to one random enemy. So, from the way this reads, I think it's just a single target second thing that does, 20 times 22%. For every 10 punchlines counted, she gains one thrill. Up to 20 punchlines are counted. Max of 4 thrill can be held, which can be used to offset her skill point consumption. So, once again, this is related to her engagement farming. So, if you have, say, 40 punchline, then wait, for every 10 punchlines, yeah, okay. So yeah, you can just get thrill, and that offsets her engagement farming skill points. Talent, which she possesses certified banger, which is something that all elation units, it seems, from the future in the future will also gain. Her enhanced basic deals fire elation damage, so it increases this multiplier essentially from just her attack to fire elation. Additionally, for every time it's triggered, the enhanced basic attack deals one extra instance of fire elation damage equal to 18% to one random attacked enemy target. Using ultimate deals fire elation damage equal to 40% to all enemies. So her talent basically makes it so she doesn't entirely scale off attack. Now it's elation, and her elation damage will just be higher than attack. So that is something also to keep in mind. Certified banger, it's a state that lasts for 2 turns. It gives her basically any character that is in the Aha instant. So her and Yao Guang at the moment will get the certified banger. It lasts for 2 turns, and then ability effects and elation damage produced calculated based on the punchline points. Punchline you'll just get, and it's shared between characters as well. So that is something also to keep in mind. And I believe it does reset on each use of the Aha instant. The only character currently that can force an Aha instant to happen is Yao Guang with her ultimate, but otherwise it'll just happen kind of like on a standard turn order, kind of like a summon like Lightning Lord or the Soul Dragon for non-home permanents or Tensei. Her bonus abilities, obviously increasing attack, 4,000 attack, she'll get maximum of 80% elation. And there are 1, 2, 3 or more elation characters in the team. Using her ult will gain additional punchline. Very nice. Just, it's not going to be the end of the world if you don't have it. On release, she'll be okay, but as we gain more elation characters, she'll probably get a bit stronger. For every punchline currently owned, increases all allies crit damage by 4% to a max increase of 40%. So 10 punchline will give you 40% crit damage. Very nice. Her minor traces give you crit damage, elation, and crit rate. And as you can see, elation is a new, kind of like a damage percent. So normally this would be like a fire damage percent. Instead, it's elation. Her Eidolons, I'm not even going to talk about them because they're honestly pretty mid. This first one is just going to buff mono elation later in the day, or not in the day, in the patch cycles. I do like the looks of the actual Eidolons a lot though as well. And then the key to this is that Sparkle has been changed a lot from her base form. Like I showed, I have an E2 Sparkle, so I've been playing her forever. And as soon as I saw these, I was like, oh my goodness, she's gonna be relevant outside of Archer. So, first key thing, her skill now lasts for 2 turns. Already just a massive buff. Because this means that she will now work with, say, like Sunday. If you speed stack Sparkle before Sunday, you pull up your DPS with Sparkle, the DPS will go, then Sunday can pull them back up. Sparkle's buff will still exist on them. So they give this similar buffs, but Sunday also gives 20% crit rate. So it does end up working out very well if you were to like now double stack with Sunday and Sparkle. Obviously, Sparkle still only has the 50% action advance, but that's still, plenty in a lot of circumstances. Her ultimate now gives 6 skill points. Crazy. That's big. If skill points overflow, she gains Mask. When the ally character's turn ends, if the team has fewer skill points than the max, Sparkle consumes 1 stack of max to recover 1 skill point until the limit is breached. Then Cypher, the key thing here, Cypher is changed based off her talents. We'll actually look at that real quick. While Sparkle's on the battlefield, it should increase max number of skill points, still by 2. Whenever an ally target consumes 1 skill point, all enemies' damage received increases by 3%. This effect lasts for 2 turns. It can stack up to 4. So you're getting vulnerability now instead of damage percent, which buffs Sparksy, but also is just a more valuable multiplier. So that is very nice. And Cypher gives additional 5% per stack, lasting for 3 turns. So essentially, you'd get 12% here. It lasts for 2 turns. Whenever you use skill points, they're going to use a lot of skill points, so it doesn't really matter with whoever you play her with. But that'll give an extra 5%. So it'll be 8% per stack, up to a total of 32% vulnerability. That is a lot of vulnerability, especially on an action advancing support. That is just crazy to me. Such a strong skill. And then everything else here, they changed some stuff, but it's not as impactful for me for the most part. The only thing that is the most is this one, Artificial Flower. We'll go through these. They kept the basic attack regenerating energy on her first one. When an ally character who possessed the crit damage boost effect provided by the skill consumes skill points, Sparkle additionally regenerates 1 energy. It could help her potentially reach a 2-turn ult quicker, and we're going to talk about that later. But overall, not the most impactful. And it also depends. I haven't looked at it yet, but it does depend on if it's consuming a skill point per like a character's action, or if it's each time a skill point's consumed, because that does make a big difference in how much effective energy she'll gain. Her second one, Finale consumes 3 or more skill points in a single action, which I assume means like an archer state, like a stance switch or something. Her next skill usage will not consume skill points. Very nice. Just makes it so that you have more skill points available for your next action advance. And then Nocturne maxes out attack increase. So it used to be a ramping thing depending on quantum characters. Now it's just flat 45% for all allies. When an ally character possesses the crit damage boost provided by a skill, all type res pen increased by 10%. That's another multiplier that works for Sparksy and all elation units. So that is pretty important. And they didn't change any of this, but they did change her E1. Increase the attack of all ally targets with Cypher by 40%. So that's the entire team. When the battle starts or when using skill, increases her speed by 15%, lasting for 2 turns. So that's why, for this, I now will have 200 speed on my Sparkle in battle, which is very nice. Everything else, I mean, it's not, like, bad, but it's definitely not as big of an increase as just that 15% speed, because that'll allow you to get more actions in battles. But her second one does matter here. Each stack of the talent additionally reduces the enemy target's defense by 8%. Because there's now 4 stacks of her talent, that means you're going to get 32% defense shred instead of 24. So, free 8% defense shred, we'll take that. And once again, that is another buff, or technically damage modifier, that impacts Sparksy. So they're meant to work together. Sparkle has been changed a lot to just generate more skill points, to buff Sparksy with her skill, with her engagement farming. All of her damage multipliers now work with her. And by the way, I should say this, Elation does scale off crit. So that's why you'll see Sparksy have crit damage and crit rate in her minor traces. So you can crit with it, so crit damage does work for that. Overall, I am so happy with these buffs. I think she's going to be extremely broken, which I'm a big fan of. I love Sparkle. She's my favorite character. Honestly, yeah, she's probably my favorite character in the game. At the time, she was definitely my favorite. We've gotten more characters that I've liked more, but I think a lot of people were in the same boat as me. They played Penacony, and they were like, okay, this character is just the best. So, the next thing I want to talk about, they didn't change her max energy, they didn't change her base speed, but I do want to talk about her light cone options, but we'll also look at Sparksy's. Obviously, with the new path, kind of like Remembrance, you're going to be limited on light cones. That's just kind of the unfortunate part about Honkai Star Rail and how they are now releasing new paths. Who knows, like in 5.0, we might get Propagation, we might get what was the other one that I'm forgetting the other one, but we might get propagation or something. Who knows? But new elation light cone, pretty standard stats. Decently high attack, I would say, not too bad. Um, increases where his crit damage, and it's funny because that's actually the same amount as Sparkle's light cone, which I don't know, it's actually not the same. Well, that just shows power creep, doesn't it? I thought it was 36 as well. Well, there we go. While the warrior is on the field, for every relation character on the team, increase skill point upper limit by 1, up to a max increase of 3. For every 1 skill point the warrior consumes, ignores 5% of enemy target's defense when this unit deals elation damage, and increases all allies' elation by 5%. So you can get 4 stacks. I mean, that's 20% defense ignore, 20% elation increase. Yeah, that's crazy. This is just a very, very strong light cone. Um, say in the instant you've got Sparksy and Yao Guang. You've got 2 extra skill points plus Sparkle giving you 2, so that'd be 9. Um, yeah, that's a lot of skill points. So I am definitely excited about that. I mean, this is by far obviously the best option, and it's kind of hard to imagine we'll get a better one, even with like power creep and 4.0 going on, just because it gives so many buffs that actually matter for her and skill point increase, which is a very rare trait. As of now, I think it's literally just Sparkle, Sparkle and Archer, right? I think that's all. So pretty crazy. Um, yeah, obviously this will be her best. I haven't looked at the other Elation light cones, but I would just, if you're gonna pull Sparksy, pull this over her Eidolons. We can look at them. I said I wouldn't talk about them, but they're just not very good. Um, I like the hashtag names, but after Aha instant ends, gain an additional 5 punchline for every 1 punchline owned. Increases all type res pen for all allies up to a max of 15%. So it's just obviously 10 punchline. That's super easy to get. 15% res pen isn't bad. It's for all allies, but I mean, compared to some of the Eidolons we've gotten recently, like Dahlia's E1, that's just not. It's just not great. Although it is, I guess it is nice to mention that punchline does stack for the whole team, and I said that earlier. But if you're playing a mono elation team down the line, once we get like elation MC and all that, I guess it could be better. But as of now, it's just not super impactful. And then audience knows her E2 after Aha instant ends. She gains an extra turn and 2 thrill. Each time a thrill is consumed, increase her crit damage. Crit damage doesn't really matter because you're already getting so much from Sparkle. You're probably getting like around 100 crit damage. So I would say like don't really worry about it. The extra turn is nice, and the thrill is what allows her to offset her skill point consumption on her engagement farming. But once again, I'm kind of like I don't know. If you're not going to have that many skill points anyways, so the extra turn doesn't feel super valuable to me. Whereas with other characters, it feels like it could be. And the reason I say that, by the way, is like with characters like Don Hung and Babinur Lune, you have a max of 3 skill points you can use each turn, and then his offset with his ult gives you 2 free skills. Whereas with engagement farming, the max is 20, right? Yeah, 20. So the extra turn, like you're not gonna be able to generate that many skill points to make value out of the extra turn. Is how it feels to me. I could be wrong. Obviously, this is all possibly going to change with new characters, but the way I'm thinking about it, I'm like this just doesn't seem very very nice. With the extra turn, I guess you could like basic attack, but like why? I don't know. It just feels a little anti-synergistic to me. Maybe somebody else has a better opinion, but to me, it just feels like don't go for these because your supports are going to give you these buffs or better buffs, um, and more valuable buffs, and you could just get her light cone and just. I would assume this is going to be at least like a 30% damage increase over the next best option, and not including the skill points. So yeah, that's my opinion. Pull her in her light cone. Don't go for her Eidolons, and go for like Yao Guang or like a future character. As for Sparkle, so the math here is a little interesting, but if you let me do this real quick. If you pull out the calculator, you know that obviously her max energy is 110, and enemies have gotten faster and more aggressive over time. So I think it's pretty reasonable now to expect that you're going to get hit at least once. Um, and I think it makes it so that she could probably, no, heavy probably, two turn ult. I've been doing the math just for fun, trying to figure it out before I decided to make a video. I haven't made one in a while, so we'll see how this goes. But I feel like I feel like it's now completely reasonable to expect to get two turn ults occasionally, maybe 50% of the time, depending on enemy RNG. And the reason I think that is because, and once again, it depends on how this trace works. I'm gonna read it as say say Archer uses his skill four times in like a stance switch, right? If that's the case and she gains four energy, I think it definitely makes a bigger difference than say like one. Or in the instance of this working with Sparksy, say Sparksy uses six skill points. That's six energy multiplied by obviously regeneration rate, all that type of thing. It'll just basically guarantee you get your two turn ult. So let's do some math here. Just base with Lushaka, like I've got it. So 124.4. Because let's see if we look here. I've got 124.4 energy regen. So if we go back, we've got 1.244 times, and we're going to do parentheses here. We can assume that Sparkle will skill twice, and the reason for that is just for the action advance. Technically, you don't need to skill twice because her buff lasts 2 turns now, and it saves you a skill point. Actually, gains you a skill point. So I'm not sure. I'll. Ooh, it depends on the character. I'll probably play her as skill basic, but regardless, it's the same amount of energy because of her first trace gives you 10 extra. So you will get 30 here and 30 here. So that's 60, right? And then we will assume that say we're playing like Archer. We'll just say we're playing over Sparksy. I'm trying to think of the best way to do it, but let's say with Sparksy, if you average five skill point uses or five skill point uses per action for Sparksy with your engagement farming, that will be five more energy. Plus, after using ult, she gets five back, and then yes, that's plus 70 from that. And then in this instance, I'm just not going to include Sunday Light Cone because I just want to get like a good baseline because obviously Sunday Light Cone or Bronya Light Cone give you extra multipliers for energy gain or energy regeneration. But I'll just assume baseline here, no Sunday, and we will do this. Wait, why did it? Oh, it did plus 70. Why did it do that? Okay, hold on. Let's see. So we've got 1.244 times 60 plus 5 plus 5. There we go. Okay. So if we assume Lushaka or some other energy regeneration set with ER rope, 124.4 for energy regen, then you're multiplying that times that 60 energy from skill basic. And we're assuming two turn ult here, so that's why we're trying to hit that threshold. Plus 5 energy from her first trace here, plus another 5 energy from her ult. Without including a light code, you would have 87.08 energy, which is quite a bit away. It's 23 away from being able to two turn ult, right? If you get hit by enemies, you're probably going to get up to, say, like, being optimistic, 100 energy, but it's going to be less in reality. And that's why I think, realistically, you're going to need either Sunday Light Cone or Bronya Light Cone to two turn ult. You could also include Ranmei Light Cone. I don't like it because you have to sacrifice speed for it. But the energy at the beginning of the wave, it happens, but it's not going to be consistent. I prefer consistency over, pure optimization. So let's assume Sunday Light Cone, right? You're going to use your skill twice with Sunday Light Cone. You're not going to skill basic. You're going to technically lose a skill point, but you're going to get double energy. So, in my opinion, I think it's a bit more valuable, and you're going to get more skill points just by using his skill or the skill twice as well. So we'll assume you'll get another 12 energy from that. So in this instance, instead of 87.08, it would be 1.244 times 60 plus 5 plus 5 at plus 12. And that'll give you 102.008. So that is a lot more energy. And in my opinion, that's definitely within the realm of getting a two-turn. You can rely pretty heavily now on enemy RNG without having to reset a crazy amount. And I think she will get hit. If you put her in the middle, she will get hit, and she'll be tanky enough to take the hit. I have 1324 defense, 5000 HP. Enemies are more aggressive now than ever, but also our sustains are better. So I feel like that's a pretty reasonable assumption to make. And 102.008, that is completely within the realm of, getting your two-turn ult. And if you could two-turn ult with Sparkle because of the mask or skill point overflow being converted to mask, and you being able to gain more skill points through that, I think it's going to make her even stronger. If you could two-turn ult instead of three-turn ult at 200 speed, that's massive for this character. I will include, though, Bronya's light cone, and I'm going to do the math just based on different superimpositions because we're at the point now where I think 3 years in, right? We're coming up on 3 years in. We're at the point now where people will probably have multiple copies, and because you are actually able to get multiple copies, technically free, if you wanted to, through the Light Cone Redemption Shop, or not free, but if you pay for the Battle Pass, you're able to get multiple copies. So, like me myself, I've only got S2 of her Light Cone, but people might have more if you just lose a lot of 50s, and then obviously get the percent chance to get her Light Cone. I'll lose the 75-25, all this different stuff. You definitely can get it. So I am on the board of manually calculating each of these. I think it'll just make sense, especially because you can get these much easier than I would say getting a Sunday Light Cone. But Sunday's Light Cone is definitely going to be more consistent. Let's do the math here. So S1 Bronya Light Cone gives you 10% energy regen. So instead of that extra 12 energy at the end, we're just going to make it 1.344 in this case times 60 plus 5 plus 5. And that'll give you 94.08. So that's about 16 away from her ult, which is pretty far in my opinion. That's definitely a lot less consistent. You're going to depend on maybe 2 enemy hits, even with that energy regen rate. So I would say this is not super feasible. But if we bring it up to 1.12% there, so 1.364, that'll be 60 plus 5 plus 5. And by the way, I could just do plus 70 because we know the energy amount now, but I'd rather just keep it continual here, keep it consistent. 95.48, okay. We're gaining about 3 points of energy per refinement on Runner's Light Cone. At S3, it should be around like 98.7 or something. I don't, let's see. 1.384 times 60 plus 5 plus 5. 96.88, so okay, 97 essentially energy here. And we're kind of creeping up on where it would be closer to Sunday's Light Cone. If we S5 it, which I doubt most people have, but it could be possible, and it is technically like available if you were to be able to go for it, you would gain 18% here. So it would be 1. Why is my brain not working? Oh, yeah, 1.424, I believe, times 60 plus 5 plus 5. That would bring you to about 100 energy. And if we remember, Sundays was 102. So this is definitely within the realm of getting hit by an enemy, not having to really reset. You can kind of commit to getting hit and it working out and giving you for the 2-turn. So I don't want to say anything too definitive, but I do want to say I think Sparkle in her best teams, which will be Sparksy or Archer, I think Sparkle within her best teams with a high refinement Bronya light cone or Sunday's light cone, which I feel like a lot of people have Sunday's light cone. If you don't, then maybe you'll decide to pull for it. But he's kind of, I don't know if he's gonna be meta anymore. That's a whole other discussion. But if you have it, I think Sparkle can two turn. I'm gonna say it will reliably after these changes, and I think that's crazy. Like this character, with all of her changes, all of her buffs, unless they change it like crazy in the beta, I think she's gonna be like a top tier support for a very long time. Because if other characters that are relation rely on skill point consumption, which I believe we know that Yao Guang does to some extent. Not skill point consumption, but she generates skill points. I could be wrong, but I actually let's see how targets trigger this and that. Every skill point. Yeah, for every skill point consumed during the attack, trigger the Great Boon effect up to 3 times per attack. Um, so yeah, she relies decently uh, a decent amount on skill point consumption as well. Um, and then yeah, whenever she uses her relation skill, she recovers a skill point. Bang, right there. So I I really do think Sparkle's gonna be extremely strong, and I'm not even sure it'll be related to just like teams like Archer that use a ton of skill points because her buffs are so crazy now. Like let's look at I have E1 Tribby. Where's my Tribby? Uh, let's see. I have her completely max as well. So Tribby does her follow-up attacks, which do matter. That is important. 24% all-type res pen on her skill, and then her ult gives 30% vulnerability. Right, but that's the extent of her buffs. And then obviously a little bit of max HP, but that isn't. It's not relevant for a lot of the game. Um, 30% vulnerability and 24% all-type res pen. Let's look at Sparkle. So she gives ton of crit damage. Like I'd say probably 90, but let's actually just do the math on my Sparkle because it's the easiest. And I don't have like the craziest stats on her. 156.2. How much is the multiplier? 24% of that. So 0.244 times 120. Why did I do 126? 156? Yeah, 156.2 times 156.2. So 38 plus 45. Yeah, my Sparkle's going to be giving 83 crit damage. So that's already a pretty solid buff. But it is pretty. You will definitely what's the word? Oversaturate, I guess, on crit damage in this game now. But on top of that, she will give 32% vulnerability with max stacks on this and her ult with Cypher. It's 32% vulnerability. That is more than Trippy. And you will also get what's it called? A free skill, which obviously matters for keeping skill points. But then also 10% all type res pen, 45% attack, which is much more relevant generally than the little bit of HP that Trippy gives. And then if you have her E1, which a lot of people do at this point, if we're comparing E1 to E1, Trippy deals more damage, which does matter. Sparkle gives an extra 40% attack to the whole team. And I think he's on par now. Like 10% res pen is less than 24, yes. And then 32% vulnerability is 2% more than Tribby, so not super important. Tribby does additional damage, which is very nice, gives true damage. But Sparkle gives an action advance. So it'll depend on, do you value your DPS taking more actions or Tribby dealing more damage? I personally am taking Sparkle. Not to mention the skill points, but we're just assuming as a baseline, say you're supporting like, I don't know, Evernight or something, whereas their skill point consumption doesn't really, or Acheron, because Acheron also relies on that. And I think it is interesting for Acheron because she's kind of just bad now, to be honest. I have her E2, she's just not very good. Obviously, you need debuffs to imply. I'm not sure how this is gonna work with um, what's it called with Acheron because it says whenever an ally target consumes one skill point, all enemies' damage received increases by 3%. I don't know if that's gonna apply to the enemies as a debuff, or if it's just gonna be like a multiplier, like your character deals more damage when they deal damage. I'm not sure how that's gonna work, but if it works with Acheron as a debuff, that also makes her more useful. But we'll see. I'm kind of rambling now, but I think Sparkle is just gonna be extremely strong, and you're gonna be able to spam skill points more than ever. And I really do value that. And her buffs are good enough to where she'll be usable even without needing the extra skill points. Just damage percent is so oversaturated now in the game. Like if we just look at um like who was I looking? Oh, Casterus. Let's just look at Casterus. So she gains here damage. It stacks 3 times, so 66% damage increase just from her talent, and then let's see, healing gives HP, max HP. Okay, here we go. So then we have the dragon, which increases damage multiplier. Um, Actually, wait, this is after you increase further. Oh, that's just damage multiplier. Okay, that's not damage percent. We're good. We're good. It's a separate buff. Netherwing increases damage dealt by allies by 10%. That is 66 plus 10, so it's 76%. Decrease enemies all type res. But that's already 77% damage buff. And that's from a DPS. That's not even from like. Oh, and then damage don't increase by 30%. Each stacks up to 6 times. So you're getting like another 180%. Like, your DPSs don't need more damage. That's so much. And that's kind of why I think Sunday has been so strong, because he gives damage percent, but it's not like that absurd. Where is my Sunday? There he is. Obviously, I don't have the right pick on him, but his kit is just so simple, but also just works. Increased targets 20%, crit rate by 20%, increased damage by 30%, 50% on with the summon. That's just a very simple buff, but it's not like crazy. And the teams that he works with don't typically have crazy amounts of damage percent. He doesn't get played with Casterus unless you're playing her wrong, or you don't have her premium supports. Because she already has so much. Like, you're just kind of oversaturating. Increases crit damage, very simple kit, just 50% if you have a summon, 30% if not. And his buffs are so effective, and his 100% action advance is so great. And break teams are making a comeback now because of Dahlia. She increases the break damage multiplier, but like damage percent doesn't matter for break teams. And I think even Phanon has a bunch of damage percent gain. I could be wrong. I don't really play him much, but let's see. That's his technique. Increased attack. He deals 45% increased damage for 4 turns. And then let's see. Increases crit damage. Let's see. Increases attack. Let's see. So not too crazy, but even then, it's still 45%, right? Isn't that what that said? Or 40. Wait, am I just reading wrong? I think I'm dumb. Oh, 45%, yeah. Like, that's just just like a basic thing in his kit. That's already more than Sunday gives him. That's just like in his kit. So I feel like Sparkle not giving damage percent now is just going to be so much more valuable than other buffs. And especially for Sparksy, I mean, Elation just literally does not gain damage percent outside of Elation percent, like right here. So I am very excited. Now, I don't know if Sparksy is going to be very good, to be honest. Like, I've seen numbers, I've seen her gameplay with Yaguang, but I'm not too impressed. I mean, in this game now, hitting a million is just expected, and enemies have like 14 million HP, so a million back in the day used to be great. Like, Fei Xiao hitting like 500k was a miracle, but the game has just changed so much. I don't know how good she's going to be. I am hopeful. I think she's going to be really fun, and I'm very excited to get her. But I'm more excited about Sparkle, to be honest, making a comeback as a relevant meta character. And I feel like if you're aiming for 2-turn ults, you can definitely do it. That's what I'm going for. I think it's actually extremely feasible for a lot of people, and that'll probably be the more recommended way to play her and build her now. But 3-turn ult is still really good because they did buff for skill point generation. So it went from 4 to 6. That's what, a 50% increase? Yeah, that's a 50% increase. So even if you're only 3-turn ulting, you're still essentially gaining. I'm trying about how to phrase this. If you're 3-turn ulting and you're currently 3-turn ulting, you're basically gaining an old extra ult for every 2 sparkle ults, if that makes sense. You're getting an extra 4 skill points in that same time frame, which is an old pre-buff sparkle ultimate. So it's kind of a weird way to phrase it, but I think that is just such a substantial buff for a lot of teams. Um, yeah, I'm really rambling now. I'll I'll stop talking, but I'm excited about these characters. This is the first buff that I've really been kind of overjoyed about. Sparkle, or not Sparkle, Silver Wolves was also really good. I have her E1. But it definitely didn't feel as good as seeing Sparkle getting buffed. So, yeah, with that being said, hopefully this video is is watchable. I'll have to watch it back and see if the voice moved too much or whatever. But yeah, I hope you guys learned something. If you have any thoughts, share them in the comments below, and we'll see if I upload again in the next year. We'll see. Have a great day, everybody. I'll see you on the next one. Adios.